Alright, hello guys, my name is Shay Norris and welcome to my YouTube channel. And in today's video, I'm just here to do a beginner tutorial for anybody that's just starting to get into Godot. Basically, this tutorial is to help anybody that just wants to know how to download Godot, navigate the interface, kind of get a basic idea of what you're dealing with, and just a very simple way of starting and getting into the engine. But as you can see here by my screen, we are currently on GodotEngine.org, and this is the place where you will be downloading the engine. So if you get into the Godot website, normally it'll look like this. You can see Slay the Spire 2 was made with the Godot. Amazing game. You could press this download latest button right here and it'll allow you to download 4.7, which is, as of recording this tutorial, the most recent version of Godot. You can also see here that it says download Godot and Godot.net. And if you're kind of confused, oh, well, which one do I download? As you can see here, the normal Godot versus this one just allows you to program in C#, whereas this one just allows you to use GDScript, which is the default programming language for Godot. And as a beginner, I would highly suggest you just click this one right here. And just to show you one more thing, this is just the stable version of Godot. You can also find other versions of Godot outside of the stable versions by pressing this button right here, the experimental releases button, and it'll show you a bunch of other versions of Godot right here. Either way, I'm just going to click the button and download Godot. Make sure to make a donation if you really enjoy the engine. After downloading Godot from the website, you probably should just have it in your downloads tab here, and usually all Godot downloads come in zip files, so you could just press extract all, and I'm just going to extract it right then and there. And right here, you could just open up the stable version of 1.7 and just press that run anyway button, and the interface should just open up right away for you. Now, as you can see here, I've actually recorded a previous tutorial on how to use Godot, so I'm actually going to delete this project because I don't really need to have it on the list, but just to see it, that's kind of what the program looks like if you do have a pre-existing project. I'm just going to remove this one, and if you want to create and add a new project, you can just press the Create New Project button right here. It'll prompt you to name your project. In this case, I'm going to call it Tutorial. And right down here, I guess I'll just put a space on it because I have another project named Tutorial. Wouldn't recommend that. I'll just name it Tutorial, Tutorial Better. There we go. Nice, beautiful Godot project name. And you could also browse where you want to save the file. In this case, I'm just going to select the Documents folder for it. And right here, there is options for choosing which renderer you want for your project. It actually tells you each of the requirements and things that each renderer do. You can always change this at any point in time in your project later, but depending on what nodes you have in the scene, especially in 3D, some things will not, like for example, some things in Forward will not work with compatibility. So I would just suggest choosing compatibility, especially if you're making a simple 2D game, but Forward if you're planning on making a 3D game with some spicy rendering. Oh, and also the difference between these is Forward is something that you can only run on a computer, so Windows and Mac and Linux, and compatibility can be run through browsers, and mobile can be run on phone. I think compatibility can also be run on phones as well. Just select Forward. Don't need to worry about anything else here, and press Create. As soon as you open and create your first project, you'll probably be introduced to the notable and very recognizable Godot interface. So there's a couple different options you have up here. You have 2D, 3D, script, game, and asset store. For the most part, the Once again, figuring out if you're going to make a 2D game or a 3D game, you can change between these two specific interfaces, and with scripting, you have a separate interface for writing your code in Godot. Just to give you a couple of beginner things as well, if I just go over here and go to the 2D section, you can see here that if I just click on create a root node and press to create a 2D scene here in the scene tab, you can see that I created a nice little node, and we're just going to name this scene. And after that, you can see here that there's a little star and it says unsaved. The way that Godot works, every single scene in Godot is sort of like its own collection of nodes. In this case, we only have one node here, but as you can see, if I just press the right-click button and press Add Child Node, you can see that there's a ton of different nodes that you can add, and they're all split into different kinds of nodes. There's canvas items, which are all 2D. That's a very important thing to remember. So, no 2Ds. Control interfaces are usually used for your user interfaces, so text. You know, when you got an FPS shooter, or just any game in general, and you got your lives in the top right corner, and it's like, okay, 100 lives right here, and all that kind of stuff. Your control nodes manage them. You also have node 3Ds, which are specifically made for three-dimensional nodes. Your viewports, which manage the entire game. Animation players and audio stream players. You could take a good look at a lot of these, but the most important thing to remember is that node 2Ds and controls can only be used in two-dimensional places, but in three-dimensional places you can use control nodes and node 3Ds. So in this case here, I'm just going to create a little sprite. If I just scroll down here, sprite 2D, put that right down, so we got our scene in a sprite 2D node. I just have a wonderful sprite of a character that I've been designing for a game. Just drag them right in, put them in the texture, and as you can see, I have myself a little sprite. Now, this is for a completely separate tutorial, but now that I've dragged in the image here, it looks a little blurry. Now, I'm gonna cover this in a completely different video, but especially if you're putting a pixel art in Godot, you always need to make sure, and this is to introduce you guys to the inspector menu. This has all of the properties of every single node that you're editing. You can see that there's different categories for different things. So this is a node, a canvas item, and a node 2D. And each thing has its own variables. You can see that there's visibility inside of the visibility section. There's modulate for changing the color of anything that you have inside of that scene. Basically, this inspector panel is how you edit every single node inside of your game. The way that Godot also works is that Godot works as a child-parent system, very similar to Roblox or kind of most game engines in that way. For example, scene is the parent node, and sprite 2D is inside of the parent node. So if I actually move around the scene and I change the position of the scene, take a look at what happens to our little sprite. Our sprite is the child of this particular scene, so it inherits every single thing that's being done to the scene here, especially in the inspector tab. So for example, let me just delete these guys, but for example, once again, going into this inspector tab to edit our features here, there is a setting called texture, filter, and I'm just going to change this to nearest, and as you can see, it made my pixel art go from being blurry to being nice and crisp and better to look at. Now I could just drag this little sprite in the middle of the screen, just leave it right there, and congratulations, we have a game! Yay! Yes! Not really. But once again, see how these little properties work right here? I can just use these little transform properties to move the sprite around if I want to. I can move it this way, I can move it that way, kind of put it wherever I want in the screen. And there's also a couple of tools that I can use to move things around, at least in the 2D part of the engine. There's also, in Godot, every single thing has an origin point, which is this little orange guy right in the middle of my sprite here. And that little orange thing basically determines where the sprite is going to move and rotate from. This is extremely important, especially if you're making user interfaces or just little things in general. But as you can see here, when it's in the middle, it moves from the center. And when you put it somewhere like this, it doesn't move from the center anymore. It kind of wobbles around from that point. There's also other options like grids and stuff like that. You can choose how wide you want your grids to be. You can choose if you want all of your sprites to snap to the grid, like this, where it just gets a little nice and choppy, and you can very carefully place your sprites instead of just placing them in random places. I highly recommend trying and experimenting every single little tool that you got up here, because there are plenty of them to take a look at. Another very important thing, but something that I should talk about a little bit more in another tutorial, is the import section right here. Inside of the import section, we have a bunch of different settings for how we can import our images and everything. For example, I took this image from my computer and I dragged it straight into here, which keeps folders and files of every single thing in our game. So for example here, if I just right click here on create new, go to folder and just name this sprite, we have a little folder that we can put our sprites into. I'll just slide it right in there, slide my little sunflower sprite in there, and there you go. If I also click on the image inside of the file system, you can see that I have the ability to change a couple things on it. And changing certain settings, like changing this to VRAM compress. Look at that. Look at that beautiful compression right there. We don't want that setting, do we? So I'm just going to leave it on lossless, which is perfect for pixel art. Sometimes Godot will automatically make your sprite work looks like this. So you usually have to go in here and change it to lossless, and it looks much more beautiful. Apart from being able to move and size your sprites as much as you want in Godot and to change little things inside of here, I think another thing that's really important to talk about is how to set up your project and how to, well, actually run the game at all in the first place. We don't really have much going on here, but if I just go over here to project settings and I open this little thing, there's a couple of different tabs that we have for project settings. The most important one, at least for this tutorial, is General. If you just go over to General here, there's a couple of things that you can click on here that have different settings. Most of the application settings aren't too important. This is just mostly for changing your little interface if you want to. I personally keep these the way that I enjoy them. But if we actually go down here and we go over to display and change the resolution here, if I just go down to display and window, you can see here that this is the size of the viewport window and height, which basically changes the size of the window when we're playing the game. So in this case, if I'm making a little pixel art game, I could just change it to 640 by 360. This basically changes whether it's windowed, minimized, maximized. I'm sure you guys know a lot about that. You can also make the window resizable or make it borderless if you want to. If I just quickly press close and I just open up the game, whoop, you can see here that I can't open up the game. And that's actually because I did not save my scene here. So in that case, I'm just going to name it test scene. And look at that. I'm just going to make a little folder for our file system for our scenes. Just call it scenes. Rename this one to sprites. And just drag our little scene inside of there to make sure that we're all nice and organized. And if I just press this little button to run the project here, it says no main scene has been defined. Select one, and it allows you, it's basically telling you that you have to select a scene to run as the starting scene in the game. Otherwise, it's just gonna run nothing. You can either press select current, or you can actually go over to the project settings, and if you just go over to run and press this main scene button here, you can see that we actually can select our scene in the tree and close it, and it'll just open, sorry, not this button. I'm so used to clicking this button because I always run the current scene. If you just press run project in general, you can see here that it runs our project, and look at that. That's our little sprite that we have in there. However, there's an interesting problem. As you can see here, while I'm running the project, the game doesn't really change like window size. It's extremely small. Now, I'm probably going to have another video detailing a little bit more about this particular thing, hopefully, but I actually want to show it in this tutorial as well, because this is extremely important. Now, you can also, if you don't particularly like this little interface here that shows all of these tiny little things on the top while you're testing your game, you can actually press this button right here to turn it off, and if I just press play again, you can see that the game actually runs like this. And at least for me personally, I prefer to run it like this. I would highly suggest doing that. Anyways, that should be most of the stuff for 2D scenes. There's a lot more that I haven't covered with control interfaces and also with sprite and node 2Ds, but the biggest thing that I would highly recommend you do is experiment with these things and mess around with them. But anyways, going over to the 3D portion of Godot, as you can see here, I have a 2D scene right now, and I'm not able to use it in 3D because it's a 2D scene. But if I go over to the 2D part, I can actually see it. So if I just quickly press this plus button, I can make a new little 3D scene, and if I just press X on that, now I can actually start adding stuff into the 3D scene. I can go and scroll down here and add a little block, a mesh instance, 3D, just like this. Go over here and just select something like, I don't know, like a block mesh. Yeah, let's do a little block, a nice little block, and just scale it up. You can mess around with these little things here, but one thing that I really need to emphasize, at least with 3D, is it'll look extremely beautiful in the view, but when you actually play the game, and I press this button right here, this is what it's going to look like. But if you actually want to preview what it looks like in the game and how your 3D objects are going to look in the game, this is what it would currently look like right now. If I just go over here and press an add child node, and I add something like a light, or I don't know, like just scroll down here actually and find like the little light section. Maybe we could find something interesting to add. Oh, I actually have to go to this visual instance 3D node right here, go over to light 3D, and I've got a couple of different ones. I could add an area light, a directional light, an omni light, maybe a little spotlight. I think a spotlight would be pretty fun. And as you can see here with the 3D part of Godot, there are similar tools. If I just go over here and I use the little thing to rotate it around and pull it up, you can see here that we can actually see what our light looks like. We can once again very much use this inspector tab to change the amount of energy. And if we actually want to play the game here, once again, we'll just press this little button here and just press save scene. Just gonna save it as test 3D, save it right then and there, and press play. And as you can see, oops, I still have the other scene selected as my default scene. So if you press play, Godot will always open up the default scene that you have selected as your default scene. But in this case, we don't want to do that. What we want to do is we probably want to press this button right here, which plays the current scene. In this case, it'll play our 3D scene. Now, we're actually not going to see anything because we didn't put a camera down, in which case we can just type down camera 3D, put it around, and on the inspector tab you can actually see what the preview of the camera will look like, which is extremely handy. In this case, I could just pull it right up and put it right there, press play, our current scene, and you'd see this is what our game looks like right now. Congratulations! But sorry, to backtrack and to actually show you something that's really important, Once again, using these window settings, when I make the game bigger in 3D, the resolution gets higher. But if I actually change the window settings here in project settings to viewport, take a look at this. It'll keep its pixel, which is extremely important, especially if you're making a pixel art game. If I put it on canvas items though, it'll only do that to canvas items, but not to the 3D part of the game, which is really interesting actually. I did not know that. But in this case, I'll just go up here and go to our size settings and just set it to 1920 by 1080, just like that, which is about the usual YouTube resolution size for pretty much everything. And as you can see here, I mean, that's our game. Congratulations! Anyways, the entire purpose of this tutorial was sort of to encourage you to get an idea for how the interface in Godot works, very basic understanding of how to navigate it, how to find things around Godot, but there are definitely a lot more things that I haven't specifically covered around that I will cover in other videos, such as making movement scripts, making all kinds of other things, and hopefully you guys will have a lot of fun and make your own incredible, awesome games. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you soon in the next tutorial video. Peace out.